today's DIY project brought to you by Dollar Tree. Here are the supplies. I have these 2 rings. I have 2 packs of spiders, little spiders. I have 1 big spider. I have a bundle of webs. I have 3 thick rolls of ribbon, 1 roll of thin ribbon, and the adhesive I chose was hot glue because that's what I had on hand, but if you have any other kind, that is also okay. And we're going to need some scissors. I had spent about $8 on these things, but you could spend as little as $6 or $5 instead. We're going to start out with the rings. And so we're taking this big ring first, and we're going to take a roll of thick ribbon, whatever you want to start off with, and just wrap it around this ring. At first it was a little hard to do because I had no technique going in, and then ultimately I had decided to overlap the ribbons and pull them tight as I was wrapping it around so it looked a little bit more put together and clean. I then went in with my hot glue gun and fixed any weak areas in the ribbon or any patches that weren't supposed to be there, just to fortify it a little bit more. And now we're going to take the second ring and we are going to do the exact same thing. The ribbon that I chose was kind of like a see-through orange, so it was a little bit weaker than the spiderweb ribbon, so I was having a bit of trouble wrapping it around because it kept tangling and it was just not cooperating. So here is the finished ring, so you don't have to go through my suffering with me. And it's a little see-through, but that's okay. I chose this ribbon, so it's okay. And I left this little green patch. It looks like a V. Don't worry about it. We'll get to it later. And we're going to layer these rings to add some definition, add more, just more to this sad looking wreath so far. I glued down 4 points. You don't have to glue the entire circle, and it should be okay. So for this next part, we're going to take this web and use the scissors, and we're going to pretty much cut a chunk of the web out to overlay it on top of these rings. The first chunk that I had cut out, I realized was way too big. I don't need nearly as much as that web. So I spread it out and I stretched it out to find a good area that didn't look clumpy or stringy, and I laid it over top of that. And when I laid it over top, I cut it out so it was a smaller piece, and I wrapped it around the ring and I glued it to the back so it doesn't look messy in the front. And here is that finished product. And so the next thing we're going to do is add this giant spider to that spot that we had left open. It's easier to glue onto the styrofoam than the ribbon because the ribbon is a little flimsy, so the glue kind of goes right through it. So I left this little space open, and we're going to take a glob of glue on the bottom of the spider and just press it into that spot. I had to readjust the legs and kind of fix it a little bit better so that it would fit in that spot. It kept popping up because of the legs, so that's something you're going to have to work with a little bit. And so here's our wreath so far. And for the next part, we are going to be adding more spiders. I have 2 packs of little spiders. You could do 1 pack. I just wanted a lot of spiders. I was having a little trouble getting them out, so maybe open your supplies before you start this project to save you some time. And do not dump them out like I did because they ended up getting tangled in the web and it changed the way that I wanted to look a little bit, but that's okay. We move forward. There are only happy accidents here. And so I placed all the spiders first where I wanted them to go and what I thought looked good. And then I went back and I actually glued them all down. The best way that I found to glue down these spiders was to actually just put 4 blobs of glue on the middle 4 legs of the spiders because these spiders were hollow, but if your spiders aren't hollow, then you might have an easier time than I did gluing them down. So I'm doing that, and I just kind of press it into the web and into the actual rings to make sure that they're not just glued to the web, because the web is kind of weak. So that's not what we want to do. And so for this next part, we pretty much have a finished wreath here, but I wanted to add a little bit more of flair and detail. And so for this next part, we are creating a bow to go on top and adding some extra details. I did not know how to make a bow, so I had to look it up. I found something on Pinterest that shows me how to make a bow, so we're gonna recreate it for this wreath. You are going to take 2 equally in length strands of the thick ribbon. Make sure that they're equal. If you want a bigger bow, you are going to want longer ribbon. If you want a smaller bow, you're going to have smaller lengths of ribbon, because we are then going to take these ribbons and glue them into rings in order to create it. So once you have the rings, you want to crisscross them and then glue them together, and we're going to take the thin ribbon and kind of wrap it around the crisscross strands. And it was at this moment I realized that the crisscross strands were way too thick for my liking. So I created this bow instead, where I took the thick strands and I cut them in half, and then I crisscrossed them, and then I took the thinner ribbon and wrapped it around to create the bow that you see here. I also followed these exact same steps with just the thin ribbon alone to create a smaller bow, and added some little tassels to that smaller bow with just the thin ribbon. I took the bows and I glued them together, and I saved one spider, which I was going to glue on one of the dangling pieces of ribbon to make it look like the spider was climbing, but I decided to put it in the center as just like a nice little centerpiece for the bow. And after the bow was finished, I had glued it on to the bottom of the wreath. You can put it wherever you want, whatever you see fit. Take some creative liberties in creating your wreath. And this DIY project is good for any holiday. You just need pretty much the rings, the ribbon, and just accessories to make it look however you want. So this works for Christmas, this works for Easter, this works if you want to create a fall wreath or a winter wreath or a spring wreath, whatever. You just pretty much need the rings and the ribbon. So here is our finished product, and I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope everyone has a fantastic Halloween weekend.